How's it going, everyone? What of course you'll be seeing today is a review and breakdown of the scout rifle in Destiny called the Fang of Ur-Yut. The only way you can get it is by beating hard mode Crota with the final boss of the Crota's End raid. It's random, of course, though, so you're not guaranteed to get it despite killing him, and it took me about 5 times personally for it to actually drop for me. The weapon it starts with a 300 base damage and increases to 331 when you're completely finished with the upgrades. To upgrade it, what you'll need is Glimmer weapon parts and Radiant Energy for sure. And the other form, whether it be Relic Iron, Spirit Bloom, or something like that, might be specific to your weapon, so I'm not going to disclose that completely. With regard to the weapon stats, it has a fire rate of 60%, an impact rating of 40, a range of 59, a stability rating of 40, and a reload percentage of 53. The magazine size starts at 15, but that will increase, and I'll get to that. So on preliminary look at the stats, it's very similar to Vision of Confluence, and with regard to overall balance, it displays that quite handily. It's a hard-hitting weapon that you sacrifice a bit of your fire rate for, which I tend to prefer. So if you actually like Vision of Confluence, I think this will be a very smooth transition to liking this one too. In terms of PvP damage output, the weapon hits for 41 on body shots and 61 on headshots. With regard to the skill tree, of course, since they're raid weapons, there's no variation among the weapons. Every single one deals arc damage and has 3 clear options in terms of sights. The first is the red dot sight, which is the stock one, a true sight, which increases stability and reload speed, and a focus lens sight, which specializes in longer range engagements by slightly increasing your range stat. When breaking down the skill tree, you have a choice over 2 important perks. Spray and Play, which increases the reload speed of the weapon when the magazine is empty and is my choice, or Target Mark, which highlights an enemy when you hit him with a round. I choose, like I said, I choose Spray and Play because it has more overall utility as it stands, but that's also because Target Mark is relatively useless outside of the raid, and it can be there as well for a team, and like you can be replaced completely with a team that communicates well. I imagine it was implemented exclusively for the raid to keep track of wizards, gatekeepers, and sword bearers, since they tend to be quite shifty, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. But it's not implemented well. It doesn't work well. It's a small greenish light that you'll see in the video that extends above the target's head. But it doesn't last very much long. It's maybe a few seconds in length. The color of it blends in well with Crota's background, or like the Crota's End raid background. And the third thing is it's not visible through obstructions. It sort of defeats the purpose of it if you're looking for a sword bearer behind a rock. My choice is Spray and Play. The next 3 perks which you'll have a choice over are Higher Caliber Round, which staggers enemies, Perfect Balance, which dramatically increases the stability, and Field Scout, which increases the magazine size from 15 to 27. My choice is usually Field Scout, but if I choose Spray and Play for faster reloads and I'm facing enemies that I want to stagger more, then I'll choose Higher Caliber Round. But I almost always never choose Perfect Balance, because to be honest, this weapon is extremely low recoil even without the perk, so it's sort of a waste of a perk personally. The last 2 perks of note are Third Eye, which allows you to keep the minimap up as you're aiming down sights, which helps an awful lot for PvP or in situations where you have mobs. And Hive Disruptor, of course, which increases damage to Hive Majors, which is again helpful for the raid. And the other 5 damage perks are just damage upgrades. With regard to my overall impressions, if you've seen my Vision of Confluence review, you can basically say the same thing about this weapon. It doesn't have a ton of weaknesses to speak of other than extreme short range, because it has a pretty fast fire rate, a slightly lower DPS model of scout rifle, a slightly higher DPS model of scout rifles, and it makes the damage potential of the weapon incredible because of it. In PvE, unlike many primary weapons acquired in the hard mode, it isn't situational based on the perk loadout like, say, Abyss Defiant. The weapon or the perks aren't based on return Crota trips. That's what I meant. This weapon will be useful in nearly every scenario imaginable in PvE content, especially return trips to Crota's End and Arc Nightfalls. Like I said, the only downside to it, with basically the same thing is with any other scout rifle, is that the shorter range encounters are a bit of a drawback. And even then, you can still be fine if you're skilled enough in shorter range, just because the hip fire ratio or the hip fire accuracy is pretty good and the damage content per shot is pretty good. So, but if you stay in medium to longer range, you have an advantage over just about everyone. In PvP, you'll have basically the same argument. You'll want to stay in medium to longer range encounters. Shotgun, fusion rifles, and auto rifles, despite the nerf, will have the advantage over you because it'll cause you to kick and flinch, meaning your shots will be less accurate. So stay in longer range encounters and you'll be hitting headshots and killing people all day. Additionally, having the ability to keep your minimap at all times is incredibly useful. So overall, I can see myself using this weapon in nearly every single scenario, PvE and PvP, and doing quite fine with it. Like I said, it has little to no weaknesses because the stats are extremely balanced. And final thoughts on it, like Vision of Confluence, a weapon usually specializes in either Crucible or PvE, with rare exceptions, of course. This one does both and does it very, very well. It's basically a 331 upgraded Vision of Confluence. The only difference, of course, being that it's arc instead of solar. It's very good. If you have it, you probably already know, and you'll be using it quite plentifully. Have a good one.